Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
Even if it's a business that you're still heavily involved in, there's still options there and there's still value there. You need to find the right buyer. You need to find the right person that sees that value. So I knew that the speed of scale and the speed of growth I could accelerate without having a lot of learning curve. I went for a bike ride and I was like, wow, that was the most amazing thing I've done in a long time.
My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is David Forster. David successfully built and sold 4 companies ranging from landscaping services to a retail store, and today he's going to share with us the steps that he took to prepare them for acquisition. David, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So before we get started, I want to know, what's the number one takeaway or what you want listeners to gain from this episode here on the Art of Succession?
Yeah. It's the biggest thing I learned over the years is that it's not all on you. And sometimes even more than that, succession and or making that pivot. It's not necessarily quitting. A lot of times that will sneak in as a guilt trip in your own head that you're giving up on something, and it may just be a pivot that's moving you to a better season and opening the door for somebody else.
Okay, great. So you've successfully built and sold 4 companies, is that correct?
Yep.
And now you are define your role now in the current company that you're at.
Yeah, so I'm a fractional COO and operations leader. So I help other businesses build out their systems and implement better systems to smooth out operations, be more profitable.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I know systems are going to be a huge part in the acquisition of a company, and that's why I'm excited to have you on the episode today. So let's get started. Just a little bit about your background and that first company, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm, so everything outdoors was just a had to learn, right? I learned how to work with my hands, and we didn't use very many power tools on anything. My dad loved just doing it all by hand. So I grew to appreciate all of the tools that we get to use now. But that led me into the landscape industry just kind of naturally. I love being outside, getting my hands in the dirt. And, I had kind of a solopreneur venture that I did as a younger guy going into college and stuff like that I didn't sell that one. I wouldn't necessarily really amp that one up as like a full-on business. But my first real business where we grew and scaled and had multiple crews and doing all that stuff was a landscape maintenance and design install business. Okay. Loved it. We did that for several years.
Okay. I assume you didn't start with the intent of selling this one. You started as you needed a job, or?
Yeah. I mean, I've been pretty entrepreneurial my whole life. And so I had the idea that was a possibility, but I didn't reverse engineer it for that by any means. It was definitely a raw, bootstrapped start to begin with, and to provide for my family as we were getting married.
Okay. So just in your early 20s, you start this landscape services company. Talk to me about the growth. Talk to me about what you did thinking this possibly could be your company for the rest of your life. What did that look like, and how did you start to scale it?
Yeah. So, really, I'm a very fast paced and just kind of the normal entrepreneurial type personality. So at that age, I was very rough edges and not a lot of planning going on, just going for it. Right. And, systems really weren't a need to me at that point. So scaling wasn't even like a term that I thought of. I just knew I wanted to, get to this much revenue and have this many crews. And the perspective of how I grew that business was really a top line type perspective.
Okay.
Not necessarily around profit, and wasn't really around any kind of exit strategy. It was just like, let's grow this thing and then I can, pat myself on the back and I'm a cool guy. But my work ethic definitely made it possible, and grew with a couple of really good crews, and did okay with it.
Okay. What do you think the key to your growth was? Because I know a lot of people, when they start getting into crews, I have a couple clients that are landscaping businesses. They start to grow beyond their own ability, their own ability to delegate or trust other people to do a good job and everything like that. They
Yeah.
kind of reach a plateau.
Yep.
So, and you're talking about, this wasn't purposeful or anything. It's just like more customers equals more revenue. And I'm sure cash flow was a learning experience for you in that early one. So what was it, your work ethic passed to the rest of the team and everything that was able to make that successful?
Yeah. I was going to say just absolute tenacity. But the, the probably the biggest part that I learned there was just setting the example as far as leadership. I don't think, looking back on it, right? But I don't know that I realized that in the time, but I've talked to some of the guys that worked for me at that time, and I could probably still use them as references today. That it was just a very relational. I don't treat anybody any different, whether you're big, small, young, old, whatever. I've always been that way. And so just respecting my team, and treating them like equals versus you work for me, I sign the checks, I think had a huge thing to do with being able to trust and grow and move through those early phases.
Okay. Gotcha. What shifted in your mind, and at what stage in the business did you start to look towards something different?
That's an interesting story on that one because it was unexpected. I was having a blast. We were growing. We had really great reviews, and just customers loved us. We were getting referrals. Marketing wasn't even a problem because we didn't really need to. I mean, we were doing great, right? My wife had come. She had quit her job and was running the office for me, and I was just on cloud nine, on top of the mountain. And I woke up one morning in kind of the middle of the winter, which for us was a slower season, in the Kansas City area, and I'd realized I had a dream, and in the dream, God had said, "Put it down," and I was like, "What does this mean?" Like, I'm not the kind of guy that would normally have that kind of dream, right? So I thought about it for a couple of days, and brought it up to my wife, and she said, "Oh, thank God." She said, "I am."
Answered her prayer.
Yeah, literally. Like, she was absolutely miserable, hated doing what she was doing. I thought it was the same as what she had been doing for the company she had worked for before. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Yeah. But just the different pressures of it. Right. And we had just gotten married. So starting this business, the first 4 years of marriage was just me buried in this thing until midnight every day. No time for her. Any conversation we had was now just business because she was my partner and working with me. And so she was miserable and I was oblivious.
And she's holding it all together on the administrative side,
Yep.
making
Yep.
sure payroll's getting done, there's cash, all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yep.
I know the story.
Yep. And
Okay.
so thankfully that happened early in our marriage and in that business and in a timing that it did. And so we honestly, we just took a leap of faith. And at that time, I think we listed it on Craigslist.
Okay.
And yeah, and had lots of interesting conversations through that. But we ended up connecting with another landscape business owner in the area, kept it all confidential, and made a really good transition for the customers, for the team at that time. And that was how that one kind of shaped up. It was an unexpected but blessing for my family.
Yeah. Okay. So you're kind of absorbed into like a larger area, a competitor, effectively doubling their contracts, their markets, or whatever. What did you learn about, like, because you didn't start this company thinking there'd be a sale price associated with it? What did that teach you about what you'd built and why there was value there.
Yeah. That's another unique area where there's a lot of opinions that I've heard, right? Every small business owner thinks that everything is worth way more than it is. And it's like, well, I think there's a lot out there that don't think that what they have is really worth anything. And it's not true. You may not have, even if it's a business that you're still heavily involved in, there's still options there and there's still value there. You need to find the right buyer. You need to find the right person that sees that value. And no different than a marriage or finding the right customer for a unique service. Not every buyer is the right buyer, and that's a good thing. I learned that the unique approach that we used for our customer journey was valuable.
Okay.
And the relational approach that we have to things as a business brings a ton of value. And that culture that we had built into our team and to everything we were doing was something that for sure could bring value. But I also learned where to find the value versus the things I might have thought were the value weren't. For that, it really wasn't even the, how many mowing accounts we had and how many jobs we had. That was all going to have to be recontracted and, over time. That it's cash flow and it's a good thing. It's where the business heartbeat is, but the real value behind it was the way that the relationship was with those contracts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, somebody swallowing you up, a bigger one, they could just say, well, we'll wait till you go out of business and then those people will naturally find us. But you're saying here, in this case, your competitor actually saw something in a process or that onboarding piece that you talked about there and said, we want to buy that and adapt it to our existing book of business then. So tell me just a little bit about how you happened into that. Young kid, first company, and you built a process here that somebody else is looking at and say that's valuable.
Yeah. Honestly, it's all looking back, right? At the time I didn't realize I was building a process at all. It was just the way I was raised. And like I said, the way I treat my team is the same way I treat my customers. I just wasn't there to oversell them on anything. I was there to fulfill a need and solve problems. And that relational journey of what we were building and the way that the touch points were and how often we communicated with them. And, when it's pouring rain and you can't mow a yard, that customer's grass is still growing and they are still very concerned about it. So just putting ourselves in their shoes, okay, how are they seeing it? They don't care that now we have 60 yards to do instead of 20 by Friday, right? Because it's still growing and it's not stopping. And so you got to wait for the right timing. So learning how to communicate and let them know what's going on and hear their concerns. And that was all part of our process. And so I think, potentially they saw that as an ability to improve their own systems as well when they were looking at the buy-in.
Interesting. How long did that process take you from like the dream to signing over the business?
Yeah, I think we fully hands off fully. I think it was like the middle of May. We went through a couple of discussions, one contract that was supposed to close that actually called me and backed out the morning of closing, like 2 hours before closing. And he was extremely thankful at how gracious I was about it. We went back to the drawing board and had some more discussions. And Dream listed maybe within about 3 or 4 weeks. Within about 4 weeks about 3 weeks had a contract and it was supposed to close in a few weeks. And then that one, obviously, when he backed out, it was about another week or two before that next discussion that actually turned into something. And about a month or so of the total transition, maybe a little more total transition time.
Okay. But still in the
5 months.
spring. Yeah. Under 6 months, still in the spring at the time when you guys are at your busiest season. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, great. How did you and your wife decide to start another company from that? Tell me that. Tell me that story.
Yeah. So for about the next year and a half, I actually ran a property management department for a gentleman that I kind of had a connection with, and it was a really great relationship to spend time around what I would say was kind of some mentors on a daily basis. They were just guys that had been through uh, life in the season that I was in. They were a season ahead. They were becoming, they had older kids and or having grandkids, and so just learning a lot from them around more relationship stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when he decided to diversify his portfolio, I knew that was a signal for like, all right, what's going on here? So I mentioned to my wife, what if we started another landscape company? We have no non-compete where we're at right now, and what does that look like to you? And she said, "You're a completely different guy than you were 2 years ago, and I completely trust you to do things the right way. And if that's what we're going to do, that's what we're going to do."
What had changed in that year and a half working for somebody else, being an employee again? Just maturity, family situation?
Yeah, maturity, priorities, understanding her and communication, and
work-life boundaries.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, she did a lot of work from her end too. I don't want to say that I just had to change into this different person. She learned a lot of communication with me. We just learned how to communicate together, and we learned what all of that sounds like. How to over communicate, but in a healthy way, right? And spent a lot more time together. Once we sold that business, and one of the commitments we made together was that we sold our house. Not long after that, we moved about a year later. And when we moved into the next house, we said, we don't want a house that I come home to needing to do, like, we didn't want to fix her up, or we just wanted something that was done and okay, and we were happy with it. Mm-hmm. And that way we could just be with each other, and it wasn't just coming home to more projects.
More mow lawns. Yeah. Yeah, understood that. Okay. So why landscaping the second time around?
Yeah, it's what I knew. I knew how to basically just get right back to where we were. So I knew that the speed of scale and the speed of growth I could accelerate without having a lot of learning curve. We were still within the KC metro. We were just a different part of the metro, a different county. So didn't have any non-compete issues or anything like that. And I just knew, like, suppliers and all the stuff was just already there.
Okay. Gotcha. Anything different about it other than you as the owner that you took into the second one?
Yeah. More organization starting out, more systems, thought about all of the pain points, thought about the time frames, and looked over of all of the type of work, what was the most rewarding, profitable, what was the easiest to recruit a team, and just niched down a little tighter. So that one we did mostly residential design and build within a certain price range. We were really good at kind of the mid-size projects that we could get in and out cleanly and quickly for customers that were really blown away at how fast we could do it. So they were big enough to be profitable, but they weren't so big that we were there for a month or anything. So.
Tell me just a little bit about that business and the growth and
Yeah.
the dream that led to selling that one.
Not far off, but
okay.
That one was very. I'm trying to kind of think back on it now to be accurate for you. being a different style, so less maintenance. We did bed maintenance and shrubs. Like if we installed it, we would maintain it the long term, but we weren't doing the lawn care stuff. And so that changed, a lot of the recruiting abilities, right?
Okay.
But it
So
had its own
you're
challenges.
not doing weekly maintenance at this stage. You're like
Right.
once a month or once seasonally
Yeah.
kind of coming out and cleaning up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so most of it was like a new design and install, tearing out an old landscape and refreshing it with new stuff, or new construction model homes. We did a lot of that, where we would do the initial landscape and like models that were on the parade and stuff like that. So it was a different recruiting. It expanded more quickly. It had its own challenges because there's just tighter margins in that stuff, and you have to really manage cost on waste and all kinds of different things. So dollar wise, it grew much more quickly because project sizes were much bigger. It's not a $50 mowing; it's a $5,000 install. So that part of it grew. The equipment that was needed, it was a totally different growth path that had its own stresses, but created its own learning curve and values as well.
Okay. About how big of a company relative to the second one for that, increased revenue, but less people? What's that look like?
Yeah, we ended up probably the same. I mean, I think we had 7 or 8 on average employees. Might go up a little. We had a season where we went a little over that, I think, but then just got better employees and we're able to kind of scale that back, be more efficient.
Is that like 4 crews or 3 crews?
3. Yeah.
3. Okay.
Yeah. And size, like dollar wise, we were probably double the first one because it was, all the material costs and all, just the difference in the construction style stuff and the volume of doing builder work, things like that. But the margins were considerably tighter and had its own stresses there. But so same number of people doing very different things, more exposure, more liability, higher skill set needed, and just different learning curve for the team, different trainings.
Is this still you as the primary seller out there?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about that shift of going from weekly maintenance to larger projects and the sales cycle and everything. What did you have to learn for that process?
Yeah, just I'm not naturally a sales guy. I'm really relational, which ends up being really good in sales, and not being afraid. Like, stop thinking with my own wallet was really hard. Like a $50 mow, that's just pretty standard. It's a normal neighborhood mow or whatever. So that was pretty acceptable on most terms, and we over delivered for that price. As I've looked back and learned, that's why we stuck so well, is because we were doing so much, providing so much more than other companies were at that price point. So moving over to this, just thinking at that scale and not being afraid to actually be profitable in a job and understand, like, we have real costs and exposures and overhead and things to get this done with equipment. And so that was my biggest learning curve, jumping from maintenance to design build. Was there's 10 to sometimes 50 times the ticket, and just set the right expectations. And
okay, so what caused you to start to look for the exit on this one?
Again, this one was I think this time I think this is a stepping stone. Since we had done, the first one was 4 years, and so at about that 4-year mark, I kind of just, my antennas, I think, kind of perked, like not really knowing that, but all the way through, I'd kind of, okay, this is a stepping stone. We can build this. Maybe we keep it and it operates, and it's just a cash flow provider, and maybe we'll do something different. Because I don't know, my body's not going to hold up to this, and I don't know whether I want to take it to the level where I'm, just in like a CEO position. I don't know how I want to do that, how much I want to have to manage. So I always had my thoughts around it. And it was a really hard summer. I was really tired, burned out a little bit, and took a week off. Around my wife's birthday, we used to try to take a little bit of time off because it was mid-season, and I knew, okay, just clear my head, take some time off. I'll be fresh when I come back. And I went for a bike ride, and I was like, wow, that was the most amazing thing I've done in a long time. Partially because my wife said, if you don't go ride that thing, I'm going to sell it. And I've always liked cycling. So I had a pretty nice bike, and I worked at a bike shop previously. And so got good access to a really nice bike, and it just hung there and wasn't using it. So she said, go ride that thing or I'm going to sell it. Okay. Go for a bike ride. And it was like just mind blowing how much it just felt like everything fell off of me. And I said, all right, there's something here. I need to share this with more people. There's business owners out there that are just weighed down like I am. And there's people in just life, whether they're a business owner or not. And so I started looking into what it looked like to open a bike shop. Like, what is that? What are the vendors or suppliers, and what do I need? How much capital am I going to need? Where can I put it? Blah, 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 blah. Like, what does that even look like? And very rapidly turned into a lot of doors opening. And 3 months later, we were opening our bike shop. Oh. Still had the landscape company. So I was like, oh, this is going to be the cash flow.
I'm burned out. Let's start a second business.
Right. Yeah. There was about a 5-month period of running both, maybe 6 to 7. That was a realization period of like, you can't serve two masters. It's just not at that. Like there's a phase where maybe, you can take your hands off of a business and it operates. And there is that type of a phase for a business. This was not there. And that was an interesting dichotomy of events. And so that's when it started to transition toward the thought of, maybe we need to transition this to somebody else. And that one was actually, again, didn't use a broker, was very just used my own network and the relationships that I had built over time, and talked to a young couple that he had just launched his own company, and was a really great guy. And I wanted to see them succeed. They were just starting their family. And so we had a discussion about maybe what would that look like? Do we do this together? Do you just want to do your own thing? Like, what is that? And structured a way to transition everything over to him. And he's still running it today. It's been about 8 years, and doing really well.
Okay. How long of a transition? I mean, it sounds like it was like a gradual kind of turning over rather than him come. I mean, you said part of the discussion was, does he just come in as a manager kind of thing? But
right.
It sounded like he wanted a path to ownership for this.
Yeah. And I think it wasn't super long. It was, but at least a couple months.
Okay.
Of making that transition over, and making sure that like financially it wasn't a bad idea. It wasn't setting either one of us up for failure, and going from there.
Now you're in a completely different world. You said you had worked at a bike store growing up, but you've moved now from outdoor services for homeowners to retail, inventory, all these other things. Talk to me just about that shift for you and what it required from you as a business owner, because you're still owning these companies. You're not in the chief operating officer role. You're in the chief everything role here. So what did that require you to shift and change, and where did your strengths really shine in that too?
Yeah. Again, the strengths were definitely still the relational side. And if anybody's familiar with how bike shops thrive, we would joke all the time, we're a community center, and we just happen to do the bike thing, right?
Planned rides and repeat buyers are huge in bike shops. So, Okay.
And we were planted in an area that had never had a bike shop before. So a lot of people would come in and say, "Was there enough people around here, enough cyclists to support a bike shop?" And I'd say, "No, but that's why I'm here. I'm here. I'm not here to steal business. I'm here to make more business. Like, there's plenty of people in Kansas City. We could have a lot more bike shops if more people rode bikes." And so that was my mission. I just made that my mission to get more people on bikes and show them how amazing it was for the stress relief and anxiety relief, and just along with the health side of it.
I hope that you've enjoyed my discussion with David Forster. Here on The Art of Succession, we have new episodes with business owners sharing their own succession stories twice every month. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find the interview form linked down in the description below. In part 2 of our interview, which you can find linked right here, David's going to share about scaling and selling the bike shop and how he now helps entrepreneurs bring in processes to their own business success. If this has been helpful for you, I ask that you please share it with someone else, and I want to thank you for watching The Art of Succession.